My father used to say, two broke people can't be happy. The first time I heard him say that, I was probably 17, and I thought, that's the most unromantic shit I've ever heard. At the time I was young and optimistic, and I genuinely believed that love was enough. I thought that if two people wanted each other badly enough, that everything else was just logistics. I have since disabused myself of that notion. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still romantic. I'm still very romantic, but now I'm a hopeful, realistic romantic. And from where I stand today, I think that my father might have been onto something. I think he might have been onto something. Not because money is everything, but because the absence of money or the fear of losing it or, never quite feeling like there's enough, that does something to you. It does something to your body, it does something to desire, it definitely does something to your sex life. And a lot of people never really connect that back to the source. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is Sex in Real Life, where we have honest conversations about sex, intimacy, and relationships beyond 40. I'm your host, Stacey Herrera. I want to be clear about something before we go any further. When I say money stress, I am not only talking about poverty or extreme debt or like losing your job. And those are very real things and they count. So I'm not minimizing them. But I'm also talking about struggle light, right? Like sometimes there's just a season where you're fine technically, but the quality of your life has taken a hit. Like maybe you've had to scale back and recalibrate, maybe you've had to make some choices that you didn't necessarily want to make, where there's enough, right? Like you're not going to be trying to figure out your next meal, but it's tight, and money might be on your mind more than you really want it to be. Like it's taking up space right between your ears. And most of us have lived some version of that. And if you're honest, you might be able to trace a direct line between that season and something shifting in your sex life. You just might not have been able to really make the connection. Or maybe you did. But there is research that backs this up because financial worry activates your stress response, the fight or flight system, which increases cortisol. And cortisol, when it's chronically elevated, suppresses sex hormones. It impacts testosterone and estrogen, and those hormones have a lot to do with desire. I mean, there's also dopamine and, what's the love hormone? Can't think of it right now. But anyways, but when you have money struggles, you don't even realize that you've made a conscious decision about whether you're in the mood because your body is already deciding for you, right? And higher financial stress is linked to a lot of sexual problems and lower sexual satisfaction because people who are experiencing financial stress report that they are too in their head to enjoy sex. So they're too distracted. So they're definitely not experiencing relaxation or ease or presence, right? And I mean, presence is the point. So you can't have good sex from a distance, right? Sex is like this up close and personal experience. So you cannot fully be there while you're also mentally running budget calculations or replaying a difficult conversation about money or bracing yourself for the next bill. Your nervous system does not know the difference between a threat and a bill. It just knows threat and it will respond accordingly. I mean, financial stress in the body is major. It is a physical experience. It's not just like thoughts. There's a tightness, in your shoulders, maybe in your lower back, and, it follows you everywhere you go. It's in you know, the way that you have conversations, casual conversations, because it's like running in the background. Like you don't realize when you start like counting pennies over simple things. Like, you're not going to stop for that cup of coffee because $8, I mean, cup of coffee is expensive these days. $8 can be significant when you're strapped, right? It just makes it very difficult for you to be present anywhere and not just in bed. So, yeah, um financial stress is not just like this mental experience, it lives in your body. And also, chronic stress of any kind is exhausting. It is so exhausting. I mean, it's bigger than exhaust. It's fatigue, right? It's fatiguing. And it's hard to explain to someone who isn't in it, but when you're going through it, it's like you're in this kind of alert mode that just doesn't turn off. And then you're supposed to want to have sex in the middle of that, right? You're supposed to be ready to get busy and be present and available and desire and be desirable. I mean, it's a tall order. It is. It's a tall order. Okay, so here's where I want to slow down. I just want to slow down because I do not want you to hear this as money stress kills your libido, full stop, because that's too simple and it's just not true. The impact of financial stress on your sex life is real and it is consistent if that's where you're at, but it does not look the same for everyone. For some people, stress, however it shows up, shuts down desire completely. The libido is just like, no, we're not doing that, right? So sex might start to feel like one more thing on a list of things that require energy that you just do not have. And that might look like, your partner reaching for you and you don't really feel nothing. Or worse, worse, you feel a little irritated, and it isn't because, it's not about love. It's just that your nervous system is tapped out and intimacy requires a kind of openness that survival mode does not afford. But then for other people, it swings the other way and sex becomes a means of escape, the place where you can go, where the noise stops, where your body can just take over for like 20 minutes or an hour. You just don't have to think about the bank or your purse or the credit card debt. So if that's how you experience it, you might be having more sex, a lot of partnered sex or solo sex, or you might be watching a lot of porn, masturbating more than usual. So, not exactly out of desire. You're not doing all that out of desire. It's a need. It's a need to feel something that isn't just dread. And I know that personally because that has been my experience with money stress in the past. There was a specific period in my life. I guess I wasn't quite 40 yet, and I was struggling. I was struggling in the way the word implies. But again, my I wasn't like in danger of like losing a place to live and I wasn't going hungry. So it wasn't that. But the quality of my life was taking a serious financial hit. And what I did with that, without realizing it at the time, of course, hindsight is 2020, so I realize it now, but I was using sex as an escape hatch. So, like, all the physical stuff was working. I mean, my body was highly responsive. I was orgasming like crazy, but I wasn't like really, it wasn't hitting all the spots, right? Like, I was experiencing some physical enjoyment, but mentally and emotionally, I wasn't fulfilled at all. And, when two of the three things are absent, is it really pleasure? I don't know. So I was there in my body, but nowhere else. So I was using sex, to get out of my head rather than to be in the experience. And yeah, it's not the same thing. I'm not saying I didn't have a good time. I did. It was a great distraction. But, when you are using sex to get out of your head versus being with it, orgasms can happen, but fulfillment probably can't, you know? In retrospect, like now, of course, again, hindsight is 2020. When I look back on it now, I can see so clearly that I was just using sex as a numbing salve, right? Because the body can perform without you being fully present. But satisfaction and fulfillment are not interchangeable. So you can be physically satisfied and emotionally unfulfilled. You can have a lot of sex and still feel like something is missing. So that is a thing. That was my thing. I think that I think it's really important to be able to give language to an experience. So I know I just mentioned two ways, but I want to just kind of give you a few ways that this can show up, like the financial stress and how it impacts your body and your sexuality and how you show up sexually speaking. There's the shutdown, which we talked about earlier. So desire just goes offline, right? You're just not interested. You're certainly not initiating it. And you might not be responding to being initiated the way you usually do, and your partner could be taking it personally. You might be taking it personally, but your body is just in triage mode. Like nothing is happening. It's like no erections, no lubrication, just nothing. Your body is just too busy just trying to keep the lights on and there's just nothing left over. So that's the shutdown. Then there's the escape hatch, which, was my go-to. So there might be more sex, more consumption of sexual content, more masturbation. It's like you're using the body's pleasure response as a pressure relief valve. And it works temporarily. It does. It works temporarily. I can attest to it. But it's relief, it's not connection. Then there are the people that go through the motions. So you're having sex because it's expected, or because it's easier than explaining why you don't want to, or because part of you thinks that you should want to, even though you don't. And sex is happening, but you're barely in it. Again, mediocre at best, tolerable at worst. There's also disassociation. So you're physically there, but you're mentally somewhere else because your mind is busy replaying conversations and making lists and running numbers and calculating how much is left over in the bank. So your body's in the room and your mind is running data. And then the last one is disillusionment. So this is kind of like the slow erosion of the idea that sex is something good and available to you. So you stop expecting it to be fulfilling. So it's not just that you're having unfulfilling sex, you have decided that sex isn't fulfilling, period. So you stop wanting it. You maybe create a story that this part of your life is just behind you now. And you're not necessarily connecting it to the fact that you've been financially stressed out for the past 2 years, right? So those are the different ways that this can show up. And I want you to know that these are not like character flaws. Like, however it shows up for you is not about you, it's situational. It's just what happens when your nervous system has been in fight or flight for long enough that it starts making decisions about what's essential and what isn't. And your libido, unfortunately, is not considered essential when you're really up against the wall. And again, this is not true for everyone. It's not true for everybody. I do want to circle back for a second, though, about how insidious delusionment can be. Delusionment specifically, because it's the one that's easiest to mistake for permanence, right? Like most of the time, financial stress is situational and it's temporary. I mean, it doesn't mean it can't go on for a long time. It can. But when you're in that space and you're disillusioned, you can mistake it for permanence. Like how you're responding, the fact that sex is not something you're interested in, or you're just experiencing a lack of fulfillment. You can connect those dots and decide that this is just how sex is now, or this is just what happens at this age, and or this relationship is just settling, or whatever. I think that disillusionment is the one that does the most long-term damage, because it isn't just, how you're experiencing sex, it changes your expectation, you know? You just stop believing that there's something worth reaching for. So I just want to point that out. It's, frustrating because stress, financial or otherwise, can linger even after you've recovered from whatever the thing. So having a hard financial season can really leave a residue for a long time. Yeah, for a long time. This is a heavy episode. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I it's so common that I would be doing us both a disservice if I didn't talk about it. So I'm sorry if it feels weighty. But here's what I want you to sit with. Survival mode is a full body experience. Like when you're in it, you're not just managing money, you're also managing fear, and fear can feel like a full-time job. It takes up space. It takes up space. It narrows your vision down to the immediate. Like, what do I need to do right now? What's the next problem? How do I get through today? So the future feels precarious and the present feels like a series of things just to get through rather than things to be in. And sex, like real sex, I mean, present sex, the kind, that really does it for you, requires the opposite of that. It requires you to be in your body, to be curious, to be available and open, to let yourself feel something good without immediately moving on to the next thing. And that's hard, sometimes impossible when you're in survival mode. I mean, it's not impossible for everybody, but it can be very difficult. And the thing that makes it a lot harder is that sometimes you don't talk about it. You might not even talk about it with your partner. When I was going through it, I wasn't talking about it with the person that I was having the most sex with, you know? And it wasn't casual, but I don't really know if they noticed because I didn't talk about it. But underneath all that, there's this offness that a lot of the time is the money thing, and so it's often, the unspoken thing is usually the thing that's sitting in the room that nobody's talking about. And money stuff is, big. I mean, and I'm not like talking just about like, we're not talking scarcity mentality. We're talking about like really the quality of your life is impacted, or you are concerned about where the next piece of support is going to come from. Like that's a very real thing. Yeah. But I don't know, like most things, talking about it can help. Sometimes, just getting the words out of your body can move energy, but and not talking about it just takes up way more space than it needs to. I'm not going to tell you that fixing your finances will repair your sex life. That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is simpler than that. I mean, can you see it? Can you make the connection between what's happening financially and what's happening in your body, right? That's it. And I hope that you're not going through it right now, but somebody is. Somebody's listening to this right now and they are exactly in this space with the financial struggle. And maybe they haven't made the connection, because you just are trying to survive. So you're living with the impact without really being able to identify the source. Or maybe you have. Maybe you have. But if you know it, like when you know what's actually happening, you can stop blaming the wrong things. You can stop deciding that, the relationship is irreparable or that your desire is gone or you're just not a sexual person anymore. You know, you can start to understand that you've just been in survival mode and it takes up a lot of space. And that's worth knowing. It's worth knowing. The version of you that exists outside of survival mode, though, the version of you that is not running on cortisol and fear and this low hum of financial anxiety, that person has a different relationship with sex and desire and presence and what's possible in and out of bed. And that person hasn't gone anywhere. They're just temporarily unavailable, which I totally get. I totally get. Survival mode is a season, and that might feel like an empty platitude if you're going through it. Your body will know when the threat is past though, and it will come online. It might not look how it looked before, but if you're aware of it, you can be present and you can initiate the transition back. When we're in these spaces though where things are hard, our nervous system is designed for this, right? And so it will prioritize and scale back anything that is not a priority. So, it's a great system, but it's hard to be with sometimes. So, I said all that to say my father wasn't wrong. Two people in financial survival mode are going to struggle. Even if just one of the people is in it and the other person in it, they're going to struggle, you know. But love doesn't stop being real. It just sometimes gets harder to feel if you're running on empty and bracing yourself for impact. If one person is struggling and having a hard time, being fully in their own life, that can show up in the bed whether you are partnered or not, right? So even if you are flying solo currently and you're going through it financially, sex is so much bigger than the activity and it's an important part of life, right? if you're listening to this podcast, it's important to you. So if that's where you're at and you're flying solo, this is for you too. I wish I had like some magic bullet to tell you how to get on the other side of it. This is one of those things that the only way out is through. Most struggles are that way. Most struggles are that way. If this landed for you, if you recognized yourself somewhere in here, share the episode with somebody else who might need it too, post it, text it, just pass it along. And if you haven't already, follow the show, hit that subscribe button so that you can get new episodes in your inbox or in your podcast channel or however that works for you. And if you feel inclined and if it's true for you, leave a 5-star review and leave a 5-star rating and a short review, because that really, really does help other people to find the show and have these conversations. I have no idea what we're talking about next week, but it's going to be good. And if this landed for you at all and you really want to reach out, I would love to hear your experience with the content, but also your personal lived experience. If you want to share, you can reach out to me directly at stacy@stacyherrera.com. I do answer all my own emails, so I'd love to hear from you if you want to share. So until next week, ciao.